Okay, let's bring in the Wednesday MPs for their view on this and other burning issues in play today. Joining us, as always, Conservative Parliamentary Secretary Aaron O'Toole, NDP MP Ginny Sims, Liberal MP Yvonne Jones. They're all up in the House of Commons foyer because there's lots of votes going on. All right, this is a rather bizarre showdown it's taking shape between the Prime Minister and the Premier. Given that Quebec Premier Philippe Couillard has had 3 meetings with the Prime Minister in the last 6 months, and Kathleen Wynne can't get any. I'm wondering if you could tell me here, Aaron O'Toole, what's going on? Is this a snub, or do you think this is a tactic the Liberals are playing against Harper out of the legislature? What's your view?
I'm not sure what's happening, Don. Certainly I was in Whitby for our by-election win there, and I know that I think every single Liberal staffer at Queen's Park spent most of their last 5 days in Whitby, and so there's some of that going on. But look, the Prime Minister meets with premiers quite regularly, sometimes in conjunction with events that they may be attending. The ministers deal with their provincial counterparts regularly, like we've seen recently with concerns about Ebola and Minister Ambrose with her provincial counterparts. I think the most important thing to look at in terms of the relationship, Don, is the last Liberal government used to have all these meetings and you know, lots of talk and photo ops, but how did they balance the books back then was really by slashing transfers to the provinces. Our government's taken an opposite approach. We give provinces an increasing amount of transfers that's predictable over time so that they can handle issues in their jurisdiction with some certainty. We're not going to slash and burn like the Liberals did years ago. So I'm sure Premier Wynne will connect with the Prime Minister, but at a very basic level, we've tried to equip Ontario with what it needs to govern.
I guess I want to go to you, Yvonne Jones, because Kathleen Wynne's a Liberal, and you're a Liberal, and I wonder if you think this is a communications breakdown or if there's games being played here from Queen's Park.
Well, I think it's games being played by the Prime Minister and by the Conservative government here in Ottawa. We're in a federation with Canada. The Prime Minister leads that federation, and if he can't do so without bias and ensuring that all provinces, all premiers get to have the opportunity to meet with him, get the air of the Prime Minister, get to lay out the platform for their provinces, well, then that's how our federation is supposed to work. Prime Minister Harper don't attend Council Federation meetings. Over the last mandate, I totally disagree with my colleague here from the Conservative Party, because what we've seen from the Conservative government is actually cuts in federal programs and services, and provinces left to pick up the slack. I've seen a lot in Newfoundland and Labrador around search and rescue, around fisheries programs, around employment programs, around training, all of those initiatives which they either transferred to provinces and then cut funding, or they just cut the program altogether and left provinces to deal with it. You look at infrastructure, which is one of the major problems in Ontario that the Premier there is dealing with. Federal government announced a great program and put no money out the door. So you wonder why provinces are frustrated and they want meetings, are demanding meetings, and I think the responsibility is there on behalf of the Prime Minister to meet with them.
Well, Ginny Sims, I'm curious if you could respond to this. Do these big Premier, Prime Minister summits, do they have a place in the national dialogue, or do you think they are photo ops, as Aaron talks about it, and really don't serve any useful function? Should they be having these again?
I think if you're going to have meetings and spend taxpayers' money, they shouldn't be photo ops. They should actually be meetings to discuss policy, and they should be to look at general direction. I know they can't get into the minutiae, but here you have a premier of one of the largest provinces, and to tell you the truth, I wouldn't even care if it was a small province, that wants to have a meeting with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister doesn't have the time. And I think that in itself is disappointing. We're very happy that Premier Wynne has endorsed and adopted the Tom Mulcair childcare plan, and we think she wants to meet with him so she can start rolling out that plan and implementing it in Ontario. And I think it's the job of a Prime Minister to meet with the premiers if they should so choose. We're not saying the Prime Minister should force meetings, but surely if in a confederation you've got a province that is feeling they need to have that dialogue because they need to push their agenda forward to explain their difficulties, explain their challenges, then the Prime Minister has to have the skill sets and the will to meet with them. And you can't say to one province, we can meet with you many times, but to other premiers, oh, I just don't have the time because we're doing other things.
Okay. I want to move along because there's other issues percolating along here. Preston Manning, arguably Stephen Harper's political godfather, if you will, former Reform Party leader, penned a very interesting column in the Globe and Mail today. Basically, how to communicate a good idea is what the title of the column was here. And basically, the good idea is a carbon tax, or at least a price on carbon. I guess I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Aaron O'Toole. I mean, if Preston Manning thinks a carbon tax or price on carbon is a good idea, surely the base must feel that way. When's your guy going to do something along these lines?
Don, I think Preston's well known for always promoting discussion about public policy, and his column was more about how to communicate issues related to the environment. Certainly he supports a carbon tax. That's not the position of our government. What we've tried to do is work on a sector-by-sector approach so that we can make some meaningful reductions to greenhouse gas emissions without massive unemployment that implementing a top-down carbon tax would cause. What the sector-by-sector review has led to, actually, Don, is we're the first Canadian government that has actually seen a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, maybe modest, but it's a reduction while our economy is growing. The key thing in the last few weeks, and this is probably what led to Preston's article, is there is talk about actually a international program that would involve the large emitters, like the United States, like China, potentially India and others. That's always what Canada's been trying to promote, so that there's a meaningful program. So I think, Preston is well respected within our party for encouraging good public policy debate. He's doing that here, but clearly we think our sector-by-sector approach is working, and that a carbon tax really would just raise the price on everything for families at a time they can't afford it.
Okay, Yvonne Jones, your party at one point in time talked about the green shift. That would have been a form of putting price on carbon. Is it time to revisit it when people like Preston Manning are saying it's a good idea?
Well, real leadership is looking at all the options, and I think what we're seeing now is the godfather of the Reform Conservative Party can no longer hold his silence on what's happening with climate change in this country and around the world, and the inactivity of the Harper government to address very serious issues around climate change and the environment. Whether the price on carbon is the solution, I think we have to be open to all ideas, all concepts, to be able to deal with this very serious issue that has confronted us with no action from the Conservative government. So, I think that's why he's coming forward at this particular time, and I don't think we should be ignoring any options that are out there in terms of how do we deal with this very serious problem. And in fact, a price on carbon is not a new concept in Canada. It's already being done in Alberta, it's being done in British Columbia, it's being done in Quebec, where there's a price on carbon with industrial developers. So, it's not new in Canada, but it's certainly a concept that the Conservatives have not wanted to talk about, nor have they want to talk about climate change and what the impact of that is having in our country today.
But Don, the Liberals signed on to
I want to get Jenny in there.
Absolutely nothing.
I think that what we have is a government that has failed miserably, and quite honestly, it's an embarrassment on the international stage, the positions we have taken or the lack of positions. And what's more embarrassing for many Canadians that I talk to is that now China and the US has made more of a commitment that Canada, a well-developed country that can more than afford to and needs to address climate issues. And carbon tax isn't the only way to address climate and environmental issues. We've got to look at it in a multifaceted way. But, this government keeps saying, oh, we've done this, we've done that. When you look at our role on the international stage and our denial by the ministers about what's really happening in the area of climate change. I think that this government has a lot to answer for to our children and grandchildren as well. And I am just always hopeful that maybe now that Preston Manning has put it out there, maybe tomorrow morning our Prime Minister will have one of those aha moments. But you know, Don, I am not going to hold my breath.
Don't hold your breath there, Jenny. Quick last topic. I want to quickly get a swing through. I've only got 2 minutes left. There's a push on to make sure these government infomercials, advertising programs that don't even have parliamentary approval, like the income splitting and the idea that boosted child care credit, a move to stop advertising them before they're approved, or at least not have them advertised during by-election periods. Good idea, Yvonne Jones, to stop this semi-partisan advertising, or how do you see it?
It should be stopped. It's taxpayers' money being used by the Conservative government to promote the Conservative message in Canada. It's nothing more than that. It's blatant, it is arrogant, it is unfair, and it's abuse of taxpayers' money and an abuse of their responsibility as government. They're taking this money, they're putting out there to promote their own message as a Conservative party, and that's exactly what it is. So you got to call a spade, and that's exactly what it is.
Quick thought from you on that, Jenny Sims?
Yeah, misleading ads. And you know, they've had their knuckles wrapped before around the Canada job grants, and now they put a tiny little footnote that nobody can see and think they're being smart, Alex. Well, no. Stop using taxpayers' money for misleading information that isn't even real yet. And they shouldn't be using taxpayers' money to promote their own partisan agenda, and especially not during by-election periods. So I think this government has been caught with their hands in the cookie jar more than once and been found guilty more than once, so stop.
Last word to you, Aaron O'Toole.
Look, Don, there is a prohibition on government advertising during general elections. By-elections are usually 1 or 2 around the country. It doesn't stop the affairs of government from operating. Look, we're spending less on government advertising than the last Liberal government.
Talk about abusing it.
The key issue here, Don, is when we're making substantive changes to tax and benefit codes in Canada, like our major enhancements to the universal child care benefit, Canadians need to know about this so that they can plan for their own taxes, so they can plan their own household spending. This has always happened. It's not misleading when it's coming through the House, and that's explained in the ad. So Canadians have to know so that they can make decisions best for their families.
Thank you all. We are out of time. I appreciate this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will see you all next week, hopefully here in the studio so I can control you better. Thank you all. We'll talk to you soon. All right.